What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. We'll be going over every backfield today, talking about which running backs I'd be starting and sitting. But before we do that, of course, have to do the stat of the day. Yesterday's stat was through 5 weeks. The top 3 tight ends in air yards are Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, Mike Gesicki, and who was 4th? And the answer is Hunter Henry. And Matt Levine was the first to get that one right. Today's stat: who currently leads the league in rushing yards per carry over expectation? All right, we usually start off with the Thursday night game, but there is none this week. They had to move the Chiefs at Bills game to Monday night since he can't really have the Bills playing Tuesday and Thursday. Not fair. People are going to get hurt. Also, there's 4 teams on bye: Chargers, Seahawks, Raiders, and Saints. So we will start off with a 1 o'clock game, and that's Washington at the New York Giants. And this game currently has the lowest total of the week and is one of just 6 games with a total below 50. So we do not expect a lot of points in this one. On the Washington side, McKissick is really only viable in full PPR leagues, and I would say stick to just 14 teams or more. I don't really think you should be starting him at all in 12-team leagues. And then Barber just isn't getting any snaps anymore, so you can't play him, can't even own him really. The one you want is, of course, Gibson. He was up to 56% of the snaps last week and now has 17 and 16 touches over the last 2 weeks. Given that Washington is only like a 2 to 3 point road underdog, we should expect this one to remain competitive, and it's possible that Gibson is playing with a positive game script in this one. Again, the total is low, which means the touchdown upside is suppressed, but Gibson is like a mid to low end running back 2 this week, mostly based on volume, not as much based on game environment. On the Giants side, Freeman's the only running back you can even consider rostering at this point. He was up to 54% of the snaps last week, and his touches have gone from 5 to 15 and then to 19 last week. Anyone getting that sort of volume, especially as a home favorite, needs to, of course, be taken seriously. He has the same game environment that Antonio Gibson has, and so he has those same concerns, and he's not as explosive as Gibson is, so we can't really rely on him to just make his day with like a 60-yard touchdown run. That's something Gibson can do, not really something Freeman can do at this point in his career. Because of that, and because of, again, the game environment, I view him as more of a low-end running back too, but someone you can definitely still start if you need to. Next up, we have Houston at Tennessee, and the line just came out on this one, and it's opened as a 55-point total with the Titans as 3-point home favorites. On the Titans side, always start Derrick Henry, especially when he's a home favorite, and it's, of course, a very high-scoring game. For the Texans, we finally saw what the split is going to look like when the Texans win a game. We have David Johnson out-snapping Duke 47 to 17, and then out-touching him 19 to 4. In a game where the Texans are ahead, we should be expecting heavy volume from David Johnson. The problem is they're probably not going to be winning all that many games this season, although it is worth noting that the Titans are going to be playing on a very short week, and so they might not look as good as they did on Tuesday night. Duke is someone that I would just keep on the bench, and David Johnson is someone that you're probably going to want to use as a running back too, given his touch ceiling. You know, he could go over 20 touches if they can win this game, and the fact that he's a clear goal line back, but he's not someone that is an absolute must start because there's a very high chance that they do not win this game. And, you know, if he's not scoring touchdowns, he's not playing with the lead, he does have a very low floor. The third game we'll go over is Falcons at Vikings. As of right now, this is one of the higher total games of the week. I think it'll be bet down a little bit, but right now it's at 55.5 points, and the Vikings are currently field goal home favorites. On the Falcons side, I think you have to just keep rolling with Gurley. The coaching change could have some sort of impact on the touch distribution, but honestly, it's not like he's getting that many touches anyways. So if they shift a few more to Brian Hill, it's not the end of the world because he was already relatively limited, and I guess there's a chance they feature him more. he's going to get, that 14 to 15 carries, his 1 to 2 receptions. He's going to be very touchdown dependent, but again, this game is a high total, so the touchdown chances are definitely higher. I don't think this is like some can't miss spot. The Vikings are not a good defense, but they have been improving. And like I said, there's a chance that Gurley's touches get capped a little bit. And there's also the chance that the Falcons fall behind and they need to throw the ball a lot more. And we know he's not overly involved in the receiving game most weeks. So ultimately, I think you are still starting him. Just understand that if the Falcons fall behind quickly, it's possible he gets kind of just scripted out of the game. On the Viking side, we know Dalvin Cook is expected to miss this week. Obviously, if he did play, you're playing him, but he's probably not going to play, and that means Madison and Mike Boone will see a boost in playing time. The Falcons are much better at run defense than they are against the pass, but that shouldn't really matter. Madison is a must-start running back one while Cook is out, and Boone would be like a desperation flex play, mostly just in deeper formats, but someone who would absolutely need a touchdown to pay off. And so if you're in like a 12-team league, you're not starting Mike Boone. Next up, we've got Bears at Panthers. This is another game with a pretty low total, and the Panthers are field goal home favorites. For the Bears, David Montgomery has been operating as the featured back, playing north of 80% of the snaps. The problem is he hasn't done anything with them. It's worth noting that they have faced 2 elite run defenses while Cohen has been out, so that is part of the reason. But if he does keep this up, then I'd imagine they're going to bring someone else in to compete for the starting job. Fortunately for him, he faces a Panthers run defense that ranks 25th in both rush defense DVOA and yards per carry allowed. So he's got a pretty good matchup this week. They've also allowed the most fantasy points per game to the running back position. So you know what? If he doesn't do anything this week, then we'll be very concerned. But this is a good spot. Assuming they don't sign Bell or trade for someone this week, then I think you are just starting Montgomery and hoping for the best. For the Panthers, it seems like McCaffrey will miss another week. If he plays, obviously play him. But if he doesn't play, then we need to keep Mike Davis just locked into lineups. If CMC is back, I want to see what beat reporters are saying on how much Davis will play. It's possible we can use him in the flex, but we're just going to have to see what they're saying, and I'll adjust the rankings accordingly. But assuming McCaffrey's out, you're playing Mike Davis. Next up, we've got Lions at Jaguars, and the Lions are 3.5-point road favorites coming off their bye. And we have another high total game sitting at 54.5 points right now. On the Lions side, we don't really know what to expect after this bye. The Jaguars are a bottom 10 run defense, and the Lions are favored, and the total is high. So you ideally want to start the running backs in that situation, but which one's it going to be? Peterson has 1 reception, over the last 3 weeks they've played, and he hasn't looked good on the ground at all. And then Swift has looked really good when they give him the chance, but they've just refused to use him for some reason. I really think that the bye will be the turning point in the season for this backfield. I don't understand why they would keep using Peterson. They're not making the playoffs. They're not winning games. He's not, going to be the future of this team. It's going to be Swift. And so why are they giving Peterson the looks? I do think Swift will come out and he will play more than Peterson over the next few weeks. And if that's the case, it's a very good spot for him. Unfortunately, we can't know that that's going to happen. And unless a report comes out indicating that that's what they're going to do, I don't see how you could really play either of them more than just like a flex. Like if you really need a running back to play in the flex, I get it, go for them. But ideally, you're usually playing like a wide receiver if it's in this range. You can still play running backs in the flex. But if you're looking at the Swift-Peterson range, you probably have a wide receiver that's a better option than these two. And so your next option would be playing running back 2, and I don't think I would want to do that. So maybe if you have 2 flex spots, play one of them, but I would just prefer to play neither. On the Jaguars side, James Robinson is a weekly must-start right now, especially against a Lions run defense that ranks 29th in rush defense DVOA, 32nd in yards per carry allowed. Plus, he's been averaging 5 receptions over the last 3 weeks. I think you're starting James Robinson. I don't really care who else you have. Next up, we've got Browns at Steelers. This game has a 51-point total, and the Steelers are field goal home favorites. On the Browns side, Kareem Hunt is a must-start whenever Chubb is out, and I would not trust any of the other running backs. For the Steelers, we are starting James Conner as a running back 1, and then McFarland and Snell are nothing more than upside plays on your bench in case Conner got hurt. Bengals at Colts is up next, and this game has a fairly average total, around 46, 47 points, and the Colts are currently 8-point home favorites, which feels a tad aggressive. On the Bengals side, Joe Mixon is the featured back. He has the second most carries in the league, the 7th most targets among running backs, along with all of the goal line opportunities. You are starting him every week. Does not matter who they're playing. For the Colts, this is a great spot for Jonathan Taylor. He's more than a touchdown home favorite. That's a fantastic spot. And it's really nice when he faces, a team that ranks 21st in rush defense DVOA, 29th in yards per carry allowed. So this matchup and the next week are really good for him, and he should be going off. Next up, we have Ravens at Eagles. This is another game with a pretty average 46, 47-point total, and the Ravens are 7.5-point road favorites, so a very similar setup to Bengals at Colts. For the Ravens, I don't see how you could really trust starting any of their running backs. They continue to split the snaps fairly evenly among all three. Ingram has 3 receptions through 5 weeks. Gus has 0 receptions on the season. Dobbins has a few receptions, but he's coming off a 1-carry performance, so I would just bench all Ravens running backs. For the Eagles, tough matchup again, but you know what? He just went off in a more difficult matchup against the Steelers last week. Sanders is the featured running back, and we always start featured running backs. Next up, we have Broncos at Patriots. This game has seen its total slowly rise since being released, and it's up to the exact same number we've seen over the last 2 games at around 46, 47 points. The Patriots are also down to 8.5-point favorites after opening as 9.5-point favorites. For the Broncos, Philip Lindsay should return this week. How the touches will be split is the biggest question everyone wants answered, but I don't think we can know for sure. My best guess is it's going to be 60-40 in favor of Gordon, given that this is Lindsay's first week back, but it could be closer to 50-50 if they feel that he's ready for his full workload and he's just fully recovered from the injury. Assuming that either of those is the case, I really don't think you should be starting Lindsay in his first week back. I think that's a bit of a thin play. I guess in a 14-team league, that's perfectly fine. And then for Gordon, I think you can start him. He is probably the favorite to be the goal line back, but he is still only a low-end running back to this week, so it does depend on who your other options are. He's my running back 19 because the Patriots aren't really a defense that I'm wanting to attack. They're very good on defense. He's also on the road. He's an underdog. The total's not super high, and since he's on the losing team or the projected losing team, their projected points are going to be pretty low when you compare it across all teams this week. So I don't love the play this week. Jets at Dolphins is up next, and the Dolphins are currently 8.5-point home favorites, and the total is around 47 to 48 points. The big news on the Jets side is that Le'Veon Bell has been released. They were trying to trade him, but no other team wanted him. He'll for sure be picked up because it's not going to cost teams that much to pick him up, but the team that picks him up probably won't be in this game, so it doesn't affect our breakdown since, he's only played in 1 game so far, so it's going to look very similar to what it did in the other weeks. That means that Frank Gore will resume his pretty inefficient role as the lead back, but one name that I would keep an eye on is Michael Pirine. I don't really understand the point of giving Gore his 10 carries for 30 yards every week. It doesn't make any sense. Pirine looked really good in camp. You're not starting either of these guys unless you're in a 16-team league or if you're super desperate in a 14-team league. But Pirine is the one I'd rather have on my bench because he does have some level of upside, and we know that Frank Gore just doesn't. For the Dolphins, Jordan Howard was actually a healthy scratch last week, so the backfield is down to Myles Gaskin and Matt Breida. Breida is just not seeing enough volume to be viable, but Gaskin has been playing about 60 to 70% of the snaps and has been very involved in the receiving game. It is a brutal matchup, but he's a viable running back 2 or maybe a flex play, but someone you can trust in the running back 2 spot, especially in a full PPR league. Next up, we've got Packers at Bucks in what should be one of the best games of the week. This one does have a 54-point total, and the Packers are just 2.5-point road favorites. On the Packers side, always start Aaron Jones, and while Jamal Williams went off in week 4, that was facing the Falcons. This is a much more difficult matchup, and so I would leave him on the bench. For the Bucks, a lot's going to depend on who's active. The Packers rank 26th in rush defense DVOA and have allowed the second most fantasy points to the running back position so far. So this is a good spot. We just need to figure out who's going to get the touches. Ronald Jones is realistically the only one you can trust at this point. And yet, even with him getting 26 and 20 touches over the last 2 weeks, I'd still be hesitant to start him if Fournette is back. Now, if Fournette's out, you're playing Ronald Jones, not really thinking too many times about it. But if Fournette is back, then we're going to need to see what beat reporters are saying about what the split's going to be, and I'll adjust the rankings accordingly. The Sunday night game is Rams at 49ers, and this game has a 51-point total, and the Rams are 3.5-point road favorites. For the Rams, a lot will depend on injuries. The 49ers were without a few corners last week, and that was clearly a problem. The defense definitely suffered. And if that's the same again this week, then, the Rams could put up a lot of points. If one of them returns, it could be a little closer. So I would just watch that situation, really just watch any sort of line movement. This is still a really difficult situation for us in fantasy. No Rams running back is likely to get over 50% of the snaps, so you'll just have to guess which one gets hot. I would rank that order of likelihood Henderson, Akers, then Brown, but there's a chance that they all just split the workload and no one's viable. I would say Henderson is fine in the flex, but he is absolutely not someone you need to be starting. Akers is a little bit of a thin play, but someone you could use if you're desperate. And then I wouldn't be starting Malcolm Brown. For the 49ers, Mostert played 48% of the snaps and had 14 touches in his return last week. He is pretty clearly the lead back in this offense, and he's averaging 7 yards per carry in the season. That's inflated from some long plays, but you know what? That's something Mostert does. He gets a lot of long plays. The Rams have an elite pass defense, but they can be attacked on the ground. So we should expect the 49ers to lean run heavy in this one, especially since that's what they like doing, and that's going to benefit Mostert. I'd rank him as a mid-range running back 2 this week, and McKinnon is fine if you think the 49ers will be trailing for most of the game. They need to play from behind, but that happened last week, and he was still kind of phased out. I'm not going to say he has no role, but with Mostert back, they clearly want him to be the guy getting the carries, and that just limits the upside for McKinnon. But if you're in a full PPR, maybe 14-team league, I guess he's viable in the flex. The first Monday night game will be the one we talked about getting moved, and that's the 5 p.m. Eastern game between the Chiefs and the Bills. The game opened as a 55-point total, and it's quickly been bet up to 57.5 points, which is going to be one of the higher totals we'll see all season, and the Chiefs are only field goal road favorites, so this one should remain relatively close. For the Chiefs, always start Clyde Edwards-Helaire and no one else, of course. For the Bills, it's going to depend on the status of Zach Moss. He was a surprise inactive this week, so I would imagine that he plays on Monday, but we'll just have to see. If he does, I'd probably bench both Moss and Singletary. This team throws the ball a lot, and Singletary did not look good on Tuesday night. Moss will also be coming off injury, so I wouldn't really trust his snap count there. I know the total's high, but Mahomes is just going to rip apart this Bills defense, so the Bills aren't going to be able to just run the ball a bunch, and they don't want to anyways. They want to throw the ball a lot, and that means that with Singletary and Moss, you're just hoping for a touchdown, and especially if Moss returns, then Moss is usually the goal line back, so Singletary has almost no upside unless he gets lucky on a few screen passes. So if Moss returns, I'd probably bench both of them. If Moss is out again, Singletary is fine, but he is not a must play. Final game of the week is Cardinals at Cowboys. This game has a 54.5 point total, and the Cardinals are 2.5 point road favorites. On the Cardinals side, Drake is not getting very many high value touches, and he has almost no involvement in the receiving game, and any that he does are just dump offs that have very little upside. So he is honestly just a touchdown or bust flex play at this point. The Cowboys do have a bad defense though, so I guess his touchdown chances are a little bit higher. As for Edmonds, he is actually flex viable. His touches are much more limited than Drake's are, but basically all of his touches are very high value touches, and his touchdown upside is probably higher than Drake because they like using him in the red zone and they like using him on designed passes, which have more upside. He remains one of the best bench players possible, and you can, like I said, realistically start him in the flex if you want to this week. On the Cowboys side, I know Dak is injured, but we are always starting Ezekiel Elliott, and this offense is still going to be good, led by Andy Dalton. They won't be as good, but they're still going to score points, and so you are always starting Zeke. So that's a breakdown of every backfield in week 6. If you want to see my exact rankings on all players, you can check that out at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. That's the end of this one. Hope you all did enjoy. If you did, how about hitting that like button, and how about subscribing to the channel if you're new? Thanks for watching.